In a city where first impressions last forever, Trisha Easy's beauty was enough to silence a room. Her skin glowed like ripe mangoes in July sun. Her curves were art. Her voice was the kind of soft that made men pause and turn. She had what Lagos called complete package. But there was one thing that ruined everything.
Her scent.
It wasn't always there. Sometimes it arrived like an invisible shadow, a musty, damp, almost metallic smell like old wood soaked in rain and sealed in nylon. It clung to her clothes, to her breath, to the memory of anyone who got too close. People never said it to her face, but their distance was loud. Her suitors vanished after one date. Bosses gave her work with minimal contact. Even conductors avoided brushing her sleeves in the bus. Trisha, the stunning girl in heels, walked the streets like a leper wrapped in lace. She didn't understand it. She bathed 3 times daily. She used roll-ons, sprays, oils, even foreign perfumes from Instagram vendors that cost half her salary. But by noon, the smell crept back like a secret nobody wanted to name. She began to believe what the whispers said, that she was cursed. It was Thursday morning in Yaba, Lagos. Trisha stood at the bus stop near a popular market, wearing a sleek wine-colored gown and black pumps. Her makeup was perfect, her hair braided into a flawless ponytail. She clutched her handbag, praying the BRT wouldn't be full. Today was special. The bank she worked at was hosting a small business outreach. Trisha, a junior marketing staff, had been selected to represent the branch and speak to over 200 entrepreneurs. This was her chance, a real one. She had practiced her pitch all week in front of her mirror. She had dreamt of shaking hands with big men from Ikeja, maybe even securing a mentorship with a regional manager. As she waited, the wind shifted. The man beside her subtly turned his head, sniffed, and stepped away. Trisha swallowed. It was happening again. She reached into her bag, pulled out a small glass bottle of body spray, and applied it discreetly under her scarf. She forced a smile. Not today, please God, not today. Before you watch further, ask yourself, what would you do if the one thing that stood between you and love, success, and freedom was something you couldn't explain, control, or erase? Would you fight to fix it? Would you hide away from the world? Or would you search for the one person who can smell beyond your skin and still choose you? Stay with this story, because what tried to ruin Trisha will one day become her power. The event was held at a private venue in Lekki Phase 1. Trisha arrived in a bolt ride paid for by her branch manager, clutching her notes and exuding quiet confidence. Inside, the room was air-conditioned, fragrant, and filled with important faces. She sat near the front, counting her breaths. Her colleague Maxwell gave her a thumbs up. "You've got this." When her name was called, Trisha walked to the podium like a queen. Her heels clicked against the tiled floor. Her smile was gentle but firm. She began to speak. At first, people listened. Then they began to fidget. A woman in a peach blazer pulled her nose. A man discreetly sprayed something into his handkerchief. Someone near the back whispered, "Is there a leak in this hall?" Trisha's mouth dried. She saw the shift. She felt the quiet recoil. The invisible wall being built again between her and every dream she'd ever had. She finished her speech with trembling fingers, bowed politely, and left the stage. No applause. Back at the office the next day, Trisha knew it was over. Her branch manager avoided eye contact. Her colleagues didn't ask how the event went. She submitted her resignation quietly, packed her things, and left without a farewell cake. It began to rain in the afternoon as she walked toward the Mushin bus park. Cold drops slapped her face. She didn't care. A black SUV slowed beside her. The window rolled down. "Excuse me," the driver said. "You're getting drenched. Can I give you a lift?" Trisha turned. A handsome man with warm eyes looked at her through the storm. She hesitated, but the rain was too heavy and her umbrella was broken. She got in. The SUV smelled of clean leather, new money, and something that reminded Trisha of heaven, maybe cinnamon and grace. The silence between them was warm, not awkward. "My name's Roland," the man said, driving slowly through the puddled streets. "You looked like you were carrying more than rain." Trisha smiled faintly. "That obvious?" He chuckled. "I've been in Lagos long enough to know when someone's fighting invisible battles." They rode in silence again, the kind that felt like prayer. When they reached her street in Surulere, she hesitated before getting down. "Thank you for not asking questions." Roland smiled. "You look like someone who's asked herself enough." She paused. "I don't usually accept rides from strangers." "Good," he said, still smiling. "But I'm not a stranger. We'll meet again. Lagos has a funny way of circling destiny." She blinked, surprised by the certainty in his voice. He drove off before she could ask what he meant. That evening, the silence in Trisha's apartment felt too heavy to ignore. She sat on her bed looking at the perfume bottles on her dresser like soldiers that had failed their general. She cried, not soft movie tears, but the kind of crying that made your stomach ache and your nose run like you had malaria. Then she heard it, a whisper, not from the window, not from the street, from inside. "This is not your smell, this is your story." She jumped, wiped her tears. "God!" She remembered something her late grandmother used to say when she was little. "Some spirits don't make noise when they pass through you. They leave a scent." Trisha had laughed then, but now it echoed with meaning. She got up, opened her wardrobe, and pulled out an old shoebox. Inside was her grandmother's Bible. She opened it randomly. 2 Corinthians 2:15. "For we are to God the pleasing aroma of Christ among those who are being saved." Trisha laughed bitterly. "So I'm an aroma now? God a beg." But the verse stuck with her. Maybe her smell wasn't a punishment. Maybe it was a pointer. On Saturday morning, her friend Monica dragged her to a traditional herbalist. "Babe, no vex. Just try this one," Monica said, sipping Zobo juice from a rubber cup. "They say he helped that Nollywood actress that used to sweat engine oil." Trisha raised an eyebrow. "What actress?" "Anne, that dark one with big eyes. You know her now. She go wear wig, sweat, go remove the glue." Trisha burst into laughter for the first time in days. "Monica, you're mad." "I'm serious. Oh, this babana correct plug. If the thing is spiritual, he go see Am. If na liver issue, he go tell you." The herbalist's compound smelled like camphor, burnt incense, and boiled leaves. He was a short man with clear eyes, dressed in white and red, sitting cross-legged. He didn't speak much. He just looked at Trisha for a long time. Then he said, "You carry scent from birth, but the scent is not from your body. It is from memory." "Memory?" she asked, confused. He nodded. "You came into this world with a story you did not finish in the last one. The smell is the voice of that story." Trisha didn't understand, but it stirred something in her chest, like an old bell she didn't know was inside her. The herbalist gave her a small clay jar with black powder. "Boil with rainwater, bathe with it for 7 nights, and talk to your mother. She knows something." Trisha left, her heart pounding with questions. Sunday morning, the sun peeked through thin curtains as Trisha sat at the edge of her mother's bed. Her mother was a reserved woman, dark-skinned, elegant even in her wrapper and net scarf. She looked up from her sewing machine, her fingers pausing mid-thread. "You came without calling. Hope no problem." Her voice was calm, but her eyes were wary. Trisha exhaled. "Mother, what happened when I was born?" Her mother blinked. "Where is this one coming from?" "Mother, please, no lies, no stories, just the truth. Did anything happen? Did someone say something about me smelling, since I was small? There was silence. Then, slowly, her mother removed her glasses, folded them, and placed them on the sewing table. You were born during Harmattan, first week of January. I remember because the midwife said she'd never seen such a quiet baby. You didn't cry, you didn't laugh, but you were beautiful, too beautiful for a newborn. Trisha leaned in. There was an old woman in our village, Mama Nwosu. She said something that day. She looked at you and said, "This child has returned, but she carries the scent of what she refused to do." Trisha's eyes widened. Scent? She meant it spiritually, that maybe your soul had unfinished work from before, something to do with healing or justice. I didn't believe all that. I was young. I just wanted a child. Trisha swallowed hard. Why didn't you ever tell me? Because I was afraid. I thought if I didn't say it, it wouldn't become real. That night, Trisha bathed with the clay black powder, as the herbalist instructed. She boiled it in rainwater she had collected in a clean bucket. As steam rose, she whispered words she didn't understand, but her heart did. She felt something strange as she poured it over her body. Not cold, not hot, just knowing. A kind of ancient heat, like old fire being rekindled. As the water ran down her skin, she saw something in the corner of her mirror. A small girl, herself, but dressed in white, watching her. When she turned, there was no one. She didn't scream. She didn't panic. She just whispered, "I see you now." For the first time in months, she slept without deodorant, without perfume, without fear. And when she woke up the next morning, there was no smell. Tuesday afternoon, Trisha got a text while frying plantain in her tiny kitchen. "I saw a woman who looked like you at a bookshop in Victoria Island. Was that you, or Destiny playing games again? Roland." She grinned. Oil popped in the pan. She typed back, "It wasn't me, but I think Destiny owes us lunch." He replied in seconds. "Saturday, Terra Culture, 2 p.m. You choose the table, I'll bring the curiosity." Saturday arrived like a secret knocking at her door. She wore a mustard-colored dress, minimal makeup, her natural hair pulled into a crown of coils. As she entered the restaurant, Roland was already there, reading The Alchemist. "You like that book?" she asked, sitting. "It reminds me of you," he said without looking up. She blinked. "Why?" "It's about someone chasing treasure far away, only to realize the treasure was inside them all along." She smiled. They talked about childhood, jollof versus fried rice, danfo conductors, and dreams they hadn't told anyone else. For 2 hours, the world disappeared. Then, suddenly, she leaned in and said, "Can I tell you something strange?" He nodded. "I used to have a smell." He smiled. "Used to?" "Yes, it's gone now, but I think it was trying to teach me something." "What did it teach you?" Trisha paused. "That not everyone who walks away from you is rejecting you. Some people are just nose-deep in their own pain, and that sometimes. Your difference is your invitation to go deeper." Roland exhaled like he'd just heard a prayer. Trisha's first public test came on a humid Wednesday afternoon. She was invited to a live radio show, one she had previously auditioned for and lost, partly because of the rumors of her body odor, but this time the producer herself had called and said, "We want your voice. Come tell your story." As she sat in the studio, waiting for the mic to go live, her palms sweated, but not from shame. It was the heat of rebirth. She wore no perfume, no artificial scent, just shea butter and faith. The radio host gave her a warm smile. "Just speak from the heart." The on-air light blinked red. "Good afternoon, Lagos. Today we have someone special, a young woman whose voice carries more than words. It carries courage. Trisha, welcome." Trisha took a deep breath. "I used to believe I was cursed," she began, steady but slow. "Not because anyone said it directly, but because I smelled different. People avoided me, laughed behind my back. I lost jobs, relationships, and sleep. I tried everything, sprays, doctors, prayers, but nothing worked. The host leaned in. So what changed? Trisha looked at the mic like it was an altar. I stopped fighting myself. I stopped masking. I listened to what the smell was trying to say, and what I found was that I wasn't unclean. I was unheard. I carried a story I hadn't told yet. The studio was quiet. Then the phone lines lit up. People called. They cried. They testified. Someone said, "You just described my life." Another said, "You gave me permission to stop hiding." In that moment, Trisha wasn't just healed. She was healing others. Later that week, Roland took her to a quiet art gallery in Ikoyi. The walls were draped in shadows and warm lights, every painting whispering stories. One sculpture caught her eye, a woman with cracked skin and flowers growing from her wounds. "That's me," she whispered. Roland nodded. "It's all of us." Then something shifted in his eyes, vulnerability. "I haven't told anyone this," he said, looking away, "but I used to stammer badly. It made me hide. For years I couldn't say my own name without shaking." Trisha stared at him. "You?" she asked softly, "but you speak so calmly now." He chuckled. "Because I stopped trying to be fluent. I started trying to be honest. And my tongue. It followed truth." They stood in silence for a moment, surrounded by art and pain and grace. Trisha touched his hand. "We were both taught to hide our fire." He smiled. "Now we light candles with it." 2 weeks later, the same media house that once ghosted her emailed again. They had a new campaign, The Faces of Resilience, and they wanted Trisha to be the lead host. A visual series about real Nigerians, real challenges, and the invisible battles we all carry. This time there was no scent to scare them away. There was only presence. The day she walked into the studio for the contract signing, heads turned. Not from perfume, but from power. The CEO, a tall, firm woman named Mrs. Adams, extended her hand. "I've been following your journey," she said. "It's time the world does too." Trisha smiled. "Thank you for seeing me." Mrs. Adams smiled back. "No, thank you for seeing yourself." Later that night, Trisha stood on her balcony, looking up at the stars. Roland had his arm around her. There was breeze, soft jollof cooking downstairs, and somewhere, a baby crying like a drumbeat. "Sometimes I still wonder if the smell will come back," she said quietly. He pulled her closer. "Even if it does, it's no longer your prison. It's your perfume of purpose." She laughed. "That sounded too deep for this breeze." He winked. "Allow me. I'm romantic when Nepa cooperates." They kissed, soft, slow, sure. And in that moment, Trisha knew. She hadn't just been healed. She had been reintroduced to her soul. Trisha sat in her new recording studio, just one room in her Lekki flat, repurposed with thick curtains, a ring light, and a second-hand mic from Computer Village. She hit the red record button. "Welcome to Hidden Battles," she began. "This isn't your usual self-help podcast. This is where the invisible becomes visible, where shame turns to story, and where every scent, physical or spiritual, has a name and a power." The first episode was called "I Was the Girl Who Smelled," and within 48 hours of upload, it had 3,200 downloads. By the end of the week, she was trending on X, Twitter, with the hashtag Healing Smells Like Trisha. Women from Mushin, Abuja, even diaspora Nigerians in Atlanta and London began sharing their own hidden battles, from psoriasis to spiritual blockages to emotional abuse. One message read, "I never knew how much I needed to hear someone say, 'You're not disgusting. You're just undiscovered.' Thank you, Trisha. You gave me permission to bloom." Trisha wiped a tear and whispered, "Amen." The universe, with all its sense of humor, decided to bless Trisha with a comedic test. She was invited as a guest judge for a Lagos inter-university talent show. As she walked in, head high, dress flowing, heels clicking like drumbeats of destiny, guess who she saw on the volunteer organizing committee? Chinwe, her old secondary school classmate. the one who once shouted "fishy, fishy" at her during morning assembly. Chinwee's makeup was melting in the heat. Her lashes clung like stubborn cockroaches, and her fake accent, "Like, oh my God, Trisha, is this really you?" was a cross between Lekki and Los Angeles confusion. Trisha smiled, a real one. "Yes, Chinwee, it's me." "You look so blessed." Trisha just nodded, eyes twinkling. "God is kind." Later that day, during a short break, Chinwee leaned closer and whispered, "Babe, no lie. That smell thing back then, ain't? I don't even know why we acted like that. I think we were just afraid of how beautiful you were. No vex." Trisha chuckled. "I forgave you years ago, right after you mistakenly sat on chewing gum and blamed it on a spirit." Chinwee burst out laughing. "Ha! You still remember that?" "Oh, I remember everything, but I don't carry it anymore. I've carried myself instead." And with that, she walked away, leaving the scent of grace behind. That night, after a long day, Trisha fell into deep sleep. In the dream, she stood in a vast courtyard filled with clay pots. Each pot gave off a different scent, some pleasant, others rotten. But at the center of the courtyard stood an old woman dressed in white lace, coral beads around her neck, her eyes bright with memory. It was Mama Nwosu, the ancient seer, who spoke at her birth. She raised one hand and said in a voice both thunder and lullaby, "Child, you did not come to earth to smell sweet. You came to remind the world that even salt has a purpose when it stings." Trisha blinked. The scent was not punishment. It was your permission to wake up, and now others will wake up through you. The old woman blew a white powder into the air. Suddenly all the pots in the courtyard began to hum, each scent transformed into music. "Go and remind them," the woman whispered, her voice fading. "Remind the broken that they are altars, not accidents." Trisha woke up with sweat on her skin and clarity in her chest. She picked up her phone, opened her notes, and typed, "We are not meant to be perfume. We are meant to be incense." It began with an email titled, "Collaboration Request, BBC Africa Voice Series." Trisha almost deleted it, thinking it was one of those fake Prince in Canada scams. But something about the sender's name felt familiar, Kent Adesina, the same journalist who once rejected her application 2 years ago. The email read, "Trisha, I've been following your podcast and recent interview. The rawness of your journey aligns with our upcoming series, Voices That Weren't Heard. Would you be open to a segment shoot in Lagos and your hometown? We'd love to tell your story globally." She froze, then smiled. Roland walked in with a tray of warm pepper soup. "Why are you grinning like you just won head of house in Big Brother?" Trisha handed him the phone. He read it, his eyes widening. Then he started to dance a little two-step azonto. "No smell in the world can block this kind of destiny, my dear." They laughed. Trisha cried, and the wind shifted again, this time in her favor. The BBC crew insisted on filming part of the documentary in her ancestral village, Uzoma, nestled in Imo State. When Trisha arrived, she felt a spiritual hum in the soil. The red earth seemed to whisper, "You've come home." They filmed her walking barefoot on the same ground where her placenta was buried. Her grandmother's house still stood weathered but proud, like the women who once lived in it. The town's oldest custodian, Elder Ifeanyi, sat her down beside the sacred kola tree. "You were always different, Trisha," he said. "You carried the scent of the ancestors, the kind that reveals hidden things. Your journey was spiritual from the beginning." Trisha asked, "Why did no one ever explain it to me?" "Because revelation has to grow teeth in you. You had to chew the silence before you could taste your truth." Later that night, the villagers gathered for a fire-lit ceremony. Drums pounded, elders poured libation, and one of the women brought forward a white wrapper and wrapped it around Trisha's waist. "You've carried shame long enough," she said. "Now carry your crown." Months passed. The BBC documentary aired across Africa and the diaspora. Trisha's podcast exploded in popularity. She was invited to speak at TEDx in Nairobi, hosted a healing retreat in Ghana, and even launched a wellness brand in Nigeria called Incense by Trisha. Her signature, a scented balm called odor, meaning return in Igbo. Its fragrance was earthy, spicy, with a sharp note of frankincense, a scent that didn't hide, but announced. People lined up to meet her at conferences, not because she was perfect, but because she was proof that wounds could become wonders. And on the day of her wedding to Roland, held in a garden under open skies, something beautiful happened. Just before her vows, a small breeze passed through the crowd. One of the older aunties leaned in and sniffed. "Wait, is that Trisha?" Everyone chuckled. Trisha smiled. "Yes, auntie, it's me." The auntie laughed. "You used to smell like okporoko left in the sun. Now you smell like royalty." Laughter exploded. Even the caterer dropped his spoon. Trisha stepped forward, held Roland's hands and said her vows. "I vow to never mask myself again, to show up with every scent, every scar, every sacred part of me, because love isn't about hiding, it's about holding." The crowd clapped.
Tears fell.
And as Roland kissed his bride somewhere beyond the veil, her grandmother smiled. The wind carried a whisper. "Now the world knows. You were not cursed, you were called." Trisha's story didn't end with her healing. It began the moment she stopped trying to smell like everyone else, and learned that even incense must burn to release its fragrance.